Remember that game you loved as a kid? It stinks. Hey friends, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and no, I'm not being serious. That game you loved as a kid certainly does not stink. I'm talking about games that some other people loved when they were kids. You and I are cool. But seriously, just like any form of art as entertainment, there are works that stand the test of time, and works that really should have studied harder for the test of time. You get it? Yeah? I'm funny, people like me. So I want to talk about a bunch of JRPGs that hold up today, and a bunch that don't. And to be clear, I'm not saying these games are bad if I'm claiming they didn't age well. Some of them I think are even good, but it's complicated. Let's get into it. When I finally decided a few years back that it was time I got around to playing the East series, I wasn't about to play East 9 first. No. I needed to see the full evolution of the series if I was to fully appreciate it. That's academic, baby. That's how you play right. I say all that kind of sarcastically, like I'm making fun of myself, but I honestly do feel like that's the best way to experience a series, at least for me. But anyway, I had East 1 and 2 on the PSP, complete in box, beautiful condition, because I caught a big retail resale shop slipping and they sold it to me for like $30 when it was trending for around 5 times that. I liked how they look on the shelf, but to be honest, I'm not crazy about playing games on the PSP. It's not super comfortable. I hate that little analog nubbin, and I really preferred to play on a big screen. So I grabbed them both on Steam for cheap and got to playing. And man, that music is fire. It is so freaking good, you guys. I don't know how Falcom Sound Team JDK does it, but they just put out straight up bangers. Just truly fantastic music. I'm sort of stalling because I don't want to get to the next part where I'm brutally honest about how I feel about East 1 and 2. Okay, ripping the band-aid off. I don't think they're very good. I mean, look, they were definitely revolutionary for the time, but I think the recreation of them on the PC and PSP kind of missed the mark, and maybe even missed the point of doing a remake of those games in the first place. See, the oldest 2 East games use something referred to as bump combat. Bump combat plays out pretty much exactly as it sounds. Instead of pressing a button to swing your sword, you just kind of run into enemies. That's how you kill them. You might be thinking, well, wait, then how do enemies hurt you? The same. It's the same way. The trick is you have to kind of run into them at an angle, like diagonally, off center. If that sounds kind of dull, it is. You're interpreting that correctly. Now look, I love the East series, guys. I really do. Falcom are a bunch of mad geniuses. But this PSP and PC release of East 1 and 2 really should have given the game proper combat. They did it on the remake of East 1 and 2 that came out on the DS. I don't know if that game is good or bad, but I do know you actually have to swing your sword in that one. It was a strange design decision in retrospect, but at the time, I guess it made a sort of sense. A lot of games back then were just about comparing your stats against an enemy's and rolling the dice to see who came out on top. That's D&D, baby. That's how role-playing got its start. But despite some nice upgrades in just about every other area, the bumpy combat in this remake does not do it any favors. Maybe we'll get a better remake one day. Fingers crossed. Similar to my East beginnings, I didn't play a Tales of game until I was well into my 30s, almost 40, in fact. Despite growing up with several at my disposal, for whatever reason, I just stayed away. But my brother has always loved them, and he convinced me to give the series a try. However, I'm not the sort of person who will just try a random game from a long-running series. I needed to go in order. So I played Tales of Phantasia on the Super Famicom, then Tales of Destiny on the PlayStation. And because Tales of Destiny 2, aka Tales of Eternia everywhere else, cost a jabillion-dollar dues, I borrowed it from my brother. Borrowed is a word I'm using extremely loosely here because we are closing in on a decade since said borrowing occurred, but he hasn't hunted me down for it yet, so on the shelf it stays. This game gets rid of the basic tile backgrounds in favor of gorgeous artwork that looks hand-painted. And maybe it was hand-painted, I don't know. Or maybe they just got really good at pixel-based art. Either way, right off the bat, I realized this was something different. I'd really love to see Bandai Namco get to this one with the remaster treatment, because I would love to see these backgrounds in beautiful HD. Of course, Chances are they don't have the original artwork anymore because in the old days, game studios used to ritualistically burn all original materials used to make their games once they came out in order to entreat the gods for favorable sales. It's a true fact. Don't look it up. The battle system is 2D and linear, but still action-based. You control your character as they run left and right on the screen and issue attack commands, pausing every now and then to order a companion to use a spell. The first two Tales games had battle systems that were interesting in theory, but kinda rough in execution, and this one feels like a big step toward excellence. It's still not my favorite battle system, not even for the series, but it's playable and it gets the job done. The story is good. I'd put it near the top of the Tales of series in terms of interesting plots, though you have to keep in mind that, to me, the Tales of storytelling tends to cap out at a B. Like, that's still really good, keep in mind, but it's not competing with something like Xenogears or Final Fantasy VII for me. What really makes this game feel relevant now, though, is the voice acting. Almost all story sequences in this game are fully voice acted. That's incredibly strange for a game this size on the original PlayStation. Now, is the acting spectacular? Oscar-worthy? No. I mean, it's like early 2000s cheesy at times, for sure. But it's actually not too bad, and it's better than even some games that came after it. If someone is interested in starting with the Tales of series and they want to try out one of the old school 2D entries, this is the one I recommend. This is where the series finally got its hooks in me, and I've been a fan ever since. The Suikoden games are incredibly beloved, especially by me. I was fortunate enough to own both Suikoden 1 and 2 on the PlayStation, and I am one of like 10 people who loved Suikoden 3 back in the day. Suikoden 1 in particular felt like a sea change to me just by nature of being so similar to what had come before it. See, in the 32-bit era, developers were moving quickly to 3D games. Sprites were so passé. We need blocky arms and pointy hair. Suikoden dared to be unapologetically two-dimensional in its presentation, with only a sort of 3D background for its battles that allowed them to do some cool little zooms and spins, you know? Otherwise, and with the exception of some of the music, this game could have run on the Super Nintendo. So I say this as someone who loved and loves Suikoden 1. It doesn't hold up quite like I wanted it to. This was hammered home for me while playing the HD remaster that came out this year. Fantastic package, I must say. It really highlights the things that Suikoden got right. But where it just doesn't feel quite right to me is in the combat. I didn't realize it back at the time, I think because I was just so enamored with the fact that you could have 6 people on your team at once, but there's really not a whole lot to the combat. You can pretty much set every battle to auto and let your team just attack. Every group of enemies will go down quickly and easily. Even most bosses, I found I needed to do very little outside of auto battling. Was it always like this? I guess it must have been. I highly doubt they went in and rebalanced things to make the game so much easier in the remaster. You can equip characters with different runes, but the abilities they give you are pretty limited. There are combination attacks certain pairings of characters can do together, but they're really not necessary. It just doesn't feel like I remembered it. Now, I'm not saying Suikoden Remastered isn't a great collection of games. It absolutely is. And I played it on normal mode, which is how I play most every JRPG, so it could very well be that increasing the difficulty will make this game an actual challenge. But regardless of how many HP enemies might have or how hard your attacks hit, it just feels extremely limited compared to what came after it. And that's fine actually, since the remaster has Suikoden 2, which is one of the finest JRPGs ever made. I think Suikoden was a great proof of concept for this series, and subsequent games were really able to do the concept justice. The original was a stepping stone, and that's perfectly okay. There was a time when grimdark was all the rage. JRPGs largely stayed away from this, at least in part because around the height of grimdark's popularity was when there just weren't as many JRPGs being made. But a few slipped through the cracks, and one of them is, in my mind, one of the best of the 6th generation of consoles, and that's Shadow Hearts Covenant, or Shadow Hearts 2, as the title screen confusingly calls it. I guess that was a marketing move. Maybe the original Shadow Hearts didn't sell that well, and they wanted to be sure we felt like we could jump right in here. It's like, I almost wish I could recommend you dive right into this game without playing the original Shadow Hearts. Don't get me wrong, Shadow Hearts is pretty good, but Covenant is such a massive glow up that having to play anything ahead of it feels like a bit of a chore. Technically speaking, I suppose you're not really missing a ton if you just play Covenant. You won't know the main character Yuri as well, obviously, and you won't really understand his motivation. And I think a decent chunk of the ending might not make a ton of sense, though, I don't know. You can probably pick up on the basics of his background by the time you reach that point. I don't know, screw it. Go ahead and just play Covenant if you want. It's pretty amazing, and honestly, I can't believe it took me like 20 years to finally get around to it. Shadow Hearts Covenant is technically the third game in the Koudelka series, and it follows dual protagonists Yuri and Karen as they battle against a secret organization in the midst of alternate reality World War I. If you're at all familiar with Shadow Hearts as a franchise, you probably know about the Judgment Ring, if not by name, then by function. Essentially, the Judgment Ring is a gameplay mechanic that lets you use timed button presses in order to increase your damage in combat. It's not so different from games like Super Mario RPG or Expedition 33 in that sense, but the key differentiator is that your button presses are visible. The wheel appears on screen and you need to press the action button when the spinning indicator is within the hot zones. Within each hot zone too, there's an even hotter zone, so if you're in for a high risk, high reward sort of thing, you can aim for even more damage. Where Shadow Hearts takes it even further though, is in how it uses the Judgment Ring outside of combat. You can use it in shops to try and score a discount, for example. It's a fun system for keeping you physically engaged with the game, even at times where most games would let you just kind of fall asleep if you wanted to. But you won't want to fall asleep with Shadow Hearts Covenant anyway, because the story is so darn good. Seriously, it's one of the wildest and weirdest stories ever put in a video game. Take the whole alternate reality Earth thing set during World War I, except there's demons and an evil secret society out to do the sorts of evil things evil secret societies want to do. Add to it a protagonist who can turn into a demon at will, and fill out the party with a vampire who is also a professional wrestler, a doll maker who fights with beautiful antique puppets, and freaking Anastasia, the actual princess from actual Russia. Beyond the weird though, the story is just presented in such an impressive way. Most cutscenes are both fully voiced and fully acted, meaning you're not just seeing characters standing still with their portraits doing the heavy lifting. This is like if Final Fantasy X went through a goth phase. In fact, I might argue the presentation actually one-ups Final Fantasy X. It's just a very good game, and having only played it for the first time a few years ago, I'm confident in saying, yeah, this holds up. This is hard for me to say, considering that A, Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite video games of all time, and B, I tried so hard for so many years to convince myself Chrono Cross was fantastic. I've recently started trying to be more honest with myself, and subsequently, with you. And so I have to make a change. I don't think Chrono Cross is great in the year 2025. I recently replayed the entire game just earlier this year. Ostensibly, it was to make a retrospective review of the game, which I'm in the process of writing, but it gave me very fresh eyes on an experience I hadn't had in its entirety in 25 years. The fact that I had only ever beaten this game way back in the year 2000 when it released should have been a clue about my true feelings. Every time I would try and replay it, and it was many times over the years I tried, but every time I'd get 3, 5, maybe 8 hours in, and I'd just stop. I could justify it at the time by thinking, oh, I got busy, I had too much else going on, or some new game came out I was really excited for. But I know now that that is not the case. Let me say what Chrono Cross has going for it. It's maybe the most beautiful game on the PlayStation 1. That's debatable, sure, but it's in the running. The soundtrack is one of, if not the best in all of video games, past and present. The combat was interesting. It took us down what ultimately was an evolutionary dead end for JRPGs, but the mechanics were cool and would have benefited from more games iterating and refining them. But the story, the characters, the things that really matter the most to me, they're not working for me. Okay, so Chrono Cross is a sequel to Chrono Trigger. Some people debate this because the director, Masato Kato, once said, oh no, if we wanted it to be a sequel to Chrono Trigger, we would have called it Chrono Trigger 2, which is some hardcore coping and also just nonsense. Sequels sometimes have different names that don't contain sequential numerators. It is a game that takes place 20 years after Chrono Trigger, and it directly involves extremely key plot points and characters from that game. I would dare say if you are not intimately familiar with Chrono Trigger, a lot of the late game story twists will make absolutely no sense to you. So this is a sequel to Chrono Trigger. The issue I have with the game is twofold, like I said, the story and the characters. I'll start with the characters. There are too many characters. I hate how many characters there are, like 40 something characters that can join your party. There are some pretty cool ones, I guess, Guile, Glenn, Kid, Riddell, Radius, they're fine. But by nature of the way this game is set up, almost none of them have any importance whatsoever to the story. Almost all of them are optional, and a depressingly large number of them are goofy as heck. There is a baby dragon who joins your party. His name is Draggy. There is a giant voodoo doll who joins your party. His name is Mojo. There is a sentient turnip who joins your party. His name is Theodore Randolphus Juliettus III. I'm kidding, his name is Turnip. And maybe worst of all, and I had completely forgotten this until my recent playthrough, there is a ridiculous little Moon Man alien character who joins your party, and his name is Starkey. And he is not optional. Getting the anti-gravity device from his crashed spaceship is literally imperative to completing the game. I hate it here. I hate it here. The story, taken in from a distance, is actually pretty cool. It does something I wish more video game sequels would do, which is focus in on one particularly interesting thread from the previous game and expand upon it in big ways. Chrono Cross handles this really fantastically. The issue with this boils down to the treatment of the main character, Surge. Now, Surge, like Chrono from Chrono Trigger, is a silent protagonist. This worked okay in Chrono Trigger because Chrono is largely not that important to the story. He's sort of an empty shell, and other than one or two pretty significant parts of the game, he could completely not be there and it wouldn't affect the outcome of events. The story happens around him, and that's fine. Surge in Chrono Cross is different. He is the most important boy in the universe, and the story is completely centered on him and how important he is. This would be fine in most games, but it's not fine with a silent protagonist. We never get any insight into Surge's personality, his feelings, his thoughts. We just have to accept that he is the key to everything and deal with it. Couple that with the dearth of important characters, and we're left with a narrative that's very cool in theory, but supremely lacking in execution. I feel pretty bad about this one, guys. I still kind of enjoy Chrono Cross, if I'm honest. I didn't hate my replay at all. It has a lot of very cool things going for it, but it does not hold up. I was always intimidated by the Shin Megami Tensei series. It was supposed to be just so punishingly difficult, and on top of that, I heard they weren't the most story or character-rich games in the genre. Those are two ingredients that are likely to make me break out in hives, so I stayed away. But for some reason, a few years ago, I decided to sit down and just try one. So I tried SMT4 on the 3DS. I thought it was pretty cool. But then I got completely lost and had no idea where to go or what to do, and I banged my head against that proverbial wall for hours and finally had to give up. So strike one, I guess. Thankfully, the series hit it out of the park with SMT3 Nocturne. Something about the aesthetic, even just in screenshots, made me super curious about this one. So sometime after I played and failed at SMT4, I tried SMT3, and I gotta tell you, this game freaking rules. It got an HD remaster a while back, and that's cool, but honestly, it barely needed it. This game just looks gorgeous on the PS2. They absolutely knew what they were doing with the art design here. Everything is so smooth and dark and frickin' moody as heck. Now, it's still very true that this game is a bit light on the story and characters. You are a silent protag, and your team is made up of demons that you convince to join you. Not typically my favorite style of JRPG, but I was able to persevere. The characters in the game are people you only interact with briefly and occasionally, and they tie into the branching narrative. Well, not exactly branching narrative, but your branching options regarding your alignment. You can choose basically how you think the world should work now that it's all been destroyed and taken over by demons. The thing is, though, that despite not having a super strong story, it still kind of feels like it does. It's hard to explain, but somehow the vibes are the story here. Walking through abandoned buildings with all this stark lighting, or coming across one of the few remaining humans in some back alley, it just feels so friggin' cool. The other thing people were right about is this game is hard. I believe there's an optional easy mode in the remaster, and no shame at all if you want to play it on that, I would. Honestly, I got to the very end of this game and had to give up. It got too hard and too grindy, but having made it 95% of the way through, I knew this game was really special. It's still got that classic SMT gameplay formula, so if you like the press-turn combat system, you'll be taken care of here. Seriously, if you're at all interested in this kind of game, you really need to pick up the remaster. It's very, very good. I don't relish being negative about my man Hironobu Sakaguchi. He made some of the most meaningful contributions to JRPGs in history. He sits right alongside people like Yuji Horii in terms of their importance. But Final Fantasy IX just ain't it, brah. I mean, it's good, okay? I think it's good. I've always thought that it was, at least as a baseline, good. But the nostalgia glasses people wear with this one are a little strange to me. It's the last hurrah of the traditional active time battle format, and little did we realize then that we'd never see it again. So I'm sure that contributes to the rose tinting on everyone's glasses. But look, this game is so slow. So slow. Yeah, I'm going there. And yeah, this is the crux of my argument. The combat system is the most sluggish in the entire series, and I cringe at the thought of sitting through that opening animation at the start of every single battle. It was so slow, they asked Nobuo Uematsu to please craft a really long intro to the battle song that puts special emphasis on the whole dun 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 classic Final Fantasy battle intro music to try and distract us from how freaking long it took to load the dang characters onto the screen. And then the combat begins, and I issue a command, and it's like the characters are paid by the hour or something, because boy, do they take their sweet time getting to work. Look, it's not just something I'm noticing in retrospect either. At the time, I was like, man, this is so slow. Why should this game feel so much slower than all the rest? Is this complaint largely negated by the quality of life features found in the modern re-release? Sure, yeah. If you like playing a game where your characters are in fast forward at all times, yeah, sure, it plays okay now. I'm not a fan of that look personally, so I just as soon rather avoid it. And okay, sure, have I played and replayed Final Fantasy IX like 5 times over the years? Yeah, so what? I'm complicated. Okay, look, I'll admit it, this one was kind of bait, kind of. I do feel like the love affair with Final Fantasy IX is a bit overblown. The story's fun, the characters are cool, and it's genuinely the funniest Final Fantasy, hands down. It wasn't a full-on comedy by any means, but it found plenty of opportunities to lighten the mood throughout, something a game like Final Fantasy XVI could have taken a lesson from. I still consider Final Fantasy IX to be a good game. A good game, mind you, not great. I'll die on this hill. Of all the takes in this video, I feel like it's between this one and the Final Fantasy IX one that are going to have people frothing at the mouth. Tales of Legendia is not the most well-loved Tales of game. I can kind of understand why, if I'm honest. At a time when the series was starting to move into full 3D with its combat system, this game stuck to the tried and true linear motion battles. Graphically, it's not great. It's fine, but it ranks pretty low on a list of prettiest PS2 games. And the second half of the game feels pretty disjointed, at least in the Western release, for reasons related to the localization. But it has so much going for it too. For one, the music. Guys, if you've watched my channel before, you might have heard me rave about Go Shiina. He's not the usual Tales of composer, that's Motoi Sakuraba, and I've also not been shy about how much I dislike Sakuraba's music in the Tales of games. But Shiina just absolutely crushed this game. I had never heard of the game before I played it, never heard the music, never heard of Go Shiina, and it immediately rocketed to the top of my favorite soundtracks list. I think the only soundtrack I might love more than Tales of Legendia is Harvestella's, which is not coincidentally also by Go Shiina. The man is a musical genius. If that was the only thing I loved about Tales of Legendia, I'd call it a day and still say this holds up. But fortunately, I don't have to go with that barely defensible position, because this game actually has a really fantastic and unique storyline. It might seem a little trite in some places. Your main character, Senel, has to rescue his sort of sister-in-law, Shirley, who's been taken by some people who think she's the chosen one. That's been done before, sure. But there's something really cool about the setting and the background that does a great job of elevating everything. The entire game takes place on the Legacy, which is a continent-sized ship that has existed since time immemorial. It's not just continent size though. It also has like mountains and rivers and towns. It's a full-on continent, but it was created by some ancient civilization. It's mysterious and we don't really get a full-on deep understanding of it. The game uses the mystery to color the world. The mystery in and of itself isn't the point. Beyond the mystery in the background, it's really the characters that make this game shine. It's got some typical early 2000s corny voice acting, of which I've heard far worse to be sure, but there's an earnestness to it that I find really endearing. Even more than how the characters are presented though, it's their interactions that make this game hold up. Shirley looks at first glance like she's going to be the most generic damsel in distress since Princess Toadstool. But she pretty quickly disabuses us of that opinion. Shirley's actually freaking cool, terrible haircut notwithstanding. Real quick, why is there such a concentration of bad hair in this series? Guys, please, let's stop that. Anyway, despite middling combat and not so pretty graphics, this game ticks all the right boxes for me, and for that reason, I can say it definitely holds up in the modern era. I'm letting Tales of Phantasia off the hook because it was a 16-bit JRPG that was doing something genuinely different and frankly kind of revolutionary for the time. Tales of Destiny, though, what's your excuse, man? Okay, it's not that bad, it's fine. But Tales of Destiny is hard to call a 32-bit JRPG. Nothing about it felt all that advanced over Fantasia. I mean, it clearly looks like a 16-bit game, animated intro aside, but that alone wouldn't make me not a fan of a game. I love 16-bit RPGs. I love playing modern games that use that aesthetic. I really didn't connect with the storyline, I'll be honest with you. It's about the man with the worst hair in the history of hair having. His name is Stan, and can we just take a minute to appreciate how bad his hair is? What's the opposite of appreciate? Depreciate? Let's depreciate it together. This is like if a mullet took steroids. It's like if Cyndi Lauper... No, it's not even like if she did something. It's just Cyndi Lauper. He has Cyndi Lauper hair. I hate it. I hate it so much. Anyway, his hair is not the story, though I think a story about how his hair got to be so bad would entertain me more than the plot of this game. So Stan meets a talking sword. To give you an idea of the storytelling prowess on display here, this sword is part of a race of talking swords, and they are called Swordians. The backstory of this game is pretty much responsible for what I consider one of the Tales of series' biggest weak points, which is how so many of the stories are about two worlds, and one of the worlds is a big oppressor of the other world. It's a fine enough concept, but Tales really does it too much. At least here, it's not the main story, it's just the background for what led to the world being as it is today. But anyway, Stan and his sword friend have to stop the bad guys from getting their hands on some ancient stuff that will make them all powerful. If I seem a little extra harsh on Tales of Destiny than the other games on the aged poorly side of this video, it's just because it fell so short of my expectations. Maybe I would have felt differently if I'd played this when it came out, but trying it for the first time really highlighted how it just doesn't hold up for me. I really do like the Tales of series. I mean, I have 2 entries on my aged well list, so you can't say I don't like Tales. But this one just didn't work for me, and I really have no desire to play it again. Hopefully the remastered gun gets aimed at Eternia or Legendia or literally any of the others before this one. Let's end on a positive note, shall we? Earthbound. Yes, Earthbound, the game that was marketed with the catchy slogan, "This game stinks." It was the 90s, we were all very dumb. If you spent time with JRPGs on YouTube, you've probably heard plenty of people waxing poetic about this game and its history. It underperformed upon release, probably in part because of the goofy ad campaign, but maybe even more so because it looked too simple for most gamers who were slavering for the coolest graphics. This game looked like it could have been on the NES. Now, it couldn't have, for sure. Like, you can look at Earthbound Beginnings, the never-released NES game that came before Earthbound, and you can see how much better Earthbound looks. Gamers didn't know any better back then, so the game kinda flopped. You could grab that giant Earthbound box on clearance for like $10. Today it is worth $3,000. So Earthbound is deceptively simple in appearance, but it holds one of the quirkiest, most fun, darkest, funniest, scariest JRPGs ever made. So here's the quickest summary. You're Ness, a little psychic boy, and you have to make friends with other psychics and also a nerd in order to save the universe from an evil from the future. The world of Earthbound is such a trip to experience, and I don't just mean the battles with their LSD-infused light shows. Normal, everyday people behave so strangely here, both in and out of fights, and it infuses the entire experience with a big dose of unreality, which works extra well because the setting is so otherwise ordinary. I feel like I've been bringing up David Lynch a lot on this channel lately, and I'm sorry, but I have to do it again. Some of this stuff feels downright Lynchian. He had a knack for making ordinary people seem extremely weird and off-putting, and that's very much what's happening in Earthbound. The combat seems simple, antiquated, really, with it being almost entirely text-based aside from the picture of your enemies and the swirling, psychotic backgrounds of each fight. But there are some cool ideas here, like the rolling health meter that decreases slower the higher you can get your guts stat. This means if you take a fatal blow, you won't die right away, not until the meter rolls down to 0. This can give you time to fire off a quick healing spell or finish the enemy off before it's too late. Very neat concept that's never really been used in any other series for some reason. And then there's the way enemies behave. Their attacks are often off the wall, and sometimes they take bizarre actions in battle that make no sense. It just strengthens the sense of surreality permeating the entire experience. And then you make your way to the end and things start to get super trippy. I mean, even trippier than they have been. And man, this is an experience. The music's also super good in, again, a really, really weird way. I love this game. There's a reason that so many indies sort of model themselves off of Earthbound, both in presentation and in substance. There was so much here, and us stupid 90s kids just didn't see it at the time. Fortunately, today, it gets the love it always deserved. And that's it. What do you think? I'm sure at least one of these made you super mad, so let me have it in the comments. Thanks so much to all of you who have chosen to subscribe to this channel. It means so much to me, and an extra special thanks to my channel members. You guys are the best. If you're in the market for a JRPG podcast, check out mine. It's the JRPG Pursuit, and we put out new episodes about JRPGs every Wednesday. Link is in the description. Anyway, with all that, happy aging, and until next time, bye.